Okay. All right. So I have us on page Nun Dalet. Is that the same thing that you have? Just put your thumb up. You hear me okay, right? Okay. Okay, we're on page Nun Dalet, and it says mistaknin kutzin sa'arim. So he says, what does that mean? V'sa'aras rosh Zair Anpin hanikroyim kutzim, which now is, so we're calling his hairs kutzim. Einam cholkim adim shakim kulun tzad echad. They don't go just in one way, on one side of the head, let's say. Elachem musukanim and musudarim l'kama tzdadim umavuar. So he said, but actually they're on all different sides, and we're going to explain it. Battalion tilin al tilin. So we had this word before. It means like they're piled on top, one on top of the other. What that means, I don't know. And what's going downwards? Tilim al tilim. They're one on top of the next. Now I have to learn how to move this book in my video. So Mahai Sitra, Lahai Sitra. So they go from one side to the next. Al Gulgolta on the skull. Maschalkim chelik l'tzad zeh v'chelik l'tzad zeh. So in some way, there's a portion of them all on both sides. Ba'odim l'malo al Gulgolas, and that's the way they are while they're still on top of the head before they really start coming down. The Hailo shemischalkim chelik l'tzad yamin v'chelik l'tzad small. So we have a portion of them on the right side, portion on the left. So before, when he said all around, that's what he understands, right and left. V'chelet l'tzad ach, no, is another one. V'chelet l'tzad upon him. So it sounds like there's four different sides. V'kach heim yordim has'arav v'nim shachin amad, and that's how they go down as they're heading downwards. And mechazim as called stadi rosh, and they cover all sides of the head. This is the meaning of this phrase. When we're talking about the hairs of the head of Zair Anpin, so the bundles are, he says, something like the words, let's see, so there's piles and piles of hairs. Because in every single side, there's a different bunch of hairs. Going on, but to honest, so we learn like this. Yasvin tili dinim. Now we had this word tiling tilim. Mateo tel is a pile, some kind of a heap. So what we said previously, Shahas Aros Rosh Zair Anpin, Yoshvim Alu Gugola. So when we use that phrase, we say that they're sitting on top of the head, of the skull. Tilim al tilim, tilim al gabe tilim, so one pile on top of the next. The hindo riboy saras. What he wants to say is why they're using the word tilim, tail. I'm not sure. It's a gematria 430. Doesn't mean anything to me. Offhand, is a tilim. The hindo of riboy saras is a tremendous amount of hairs. Mekama minim of many different kinds of hairs. Umuradim zebazeh, and they're mixed one with the next. And always see all this mix up in hairs, all different kinds of hairs mixed together. We don't see that in Zair Anpin. What's the reason? Let's talk about Zair Anpin. So they're coming out of many streams. And from, I guess, Makor is like lots of fountains, or the springs, where they spring out. That's lots Rahat Mocha. Now, what's Rahat mean? Because they come from the three different chambers that house the Mochim, Shel Zair Anpin. Because Chalel Niftach Lahir Bechababuim Humakoros, and every single one of them goes into other streams and other fountains. So therefore you see there's an awful lot of hairs there. So since we have, now he says, let me just see something. So he said you had the three chambers. Let me go up to the top line. So where do we get, my question was where we get the concept of many mochim. He said there's three mochim, three chambers for the mochim. So since they're coming from so many different places, different branches. So therefore, it's everything very chaotic. And they're mixed together in a chaotic way. But they call Zechabanimshas Aros Yoshim Alagugolis Baofen Shel Tilim Al Tilim. And that's the reason why they look like they're just piles of hairs. Become more Amnam Sa'aras Rosh Zair Anpin. Let's look at those. Yotzer Mechalo Moach Echad Bilbad, because we only have one Moach, which is the Moach Stimah. That's an Zair Anpin. So he says that change it, which is the Moach of, no, that's not the Moach Stimah. Let me say it's the Moach Chachma, I guess that is. Come from the Moach Stimah is Chachma. But there it's hidden. It's closed up over there, and it doesn't go out into a whole bunch of streams. So therefore, they're not piled up on his head, on the head, so to speak, of Zair Anpin, al tilim. So they're actually only one kind of hair is coming out below riboy, without a multiplication of different kinds of hairs. Usudarim, Ketsemer, Noki. And they're organized like clean wool below earbuvia without earvuv, without mixing them around, just scattering them around. Now let me turn my page here a little bit. Okay, there we go. So let's say the flow, the stream that's coming out of one of these chambers, what's flowing out, let's talk the chala rishon of the Zair Anpin is going to be is mashkan sa'ari. So here we have a flow out of hairs. They go out from the head itself. And they go into the interior, what does he say? Interior chamber of hairs and imshachim shefa moach. Let me read that. And from, I guess he means from the midst of this inner chalo, shalasara dimshachim shefa hamuach. This is where the shefa comes out. B'mishichusa v'hasaras misarchi b'nimshachim amada. And as they come out of this muvua, they're going and they're sending downwards. Let me get my page right. Here we go. Miss Arvin Tilim, and then all of these piles start mixing up. So it becomes piles of lots and lots of hairs. So he says mishtalshalim, and they flow downwards. The yotzim become a mabuim, and they go into a lots of what's the right word? Streamlets, something like that. He says are little brooks, which come out from this challah, which is the challah of the muach of chachma. Shehem shloshim v'shnayim mabuyim, which comes out to be, we already said that there's 32 different streams coming out of that. Shloshim v'shnayim nesivu shefa chachma, which are the paths and the pathways and the lanes of the shefa that's coming from chachma. L'shemehem na'asim v'nimshachim tilim al sa'aros. So he says, what is this word? Nimshachim tilim, these piles, they send down shells of hair, these piles of hairs. Let's go on. It said, Mechola Tinyana. Let's look at the second one, which is Bina. Min Chala Chasheni Shibugola Zair Anpin Shu Chalo Muach Bina. Nafke Chamshim Mavuin. Now here we see that there is 5 springs. I'm sorry? Is that, I didn't understand.
I can't hear you anymore. It's too choppy.
The sound is no good.
Yeah, I can't hear you. No good. It's not good.
Let me try this. Is it any better now? It is better now? Let me see if I can find the sound. Oh gosh, go away. All right, well, let's try. I don't, I'm trying something with a different computer. That's, using my main computer for, I don't know exactly where we are. Let's go up to the top of the right line. Miss Abdin Tilim, and they make themselves into piles. The Nasim Tilim Shal Sa'aras Berubim, there's a lot of hairs there. The Tali become a Mabuyan, the Smashkan Mahai Chalolo. So they start flowing downwards. Mekamas Mavuin. Now we're talking about these hairs, the piles of hairs. And the Mishachim in the Halach Hazeh come out of this chamber, Shel Muach HaChochma. Shehem Shloshim V'Shnayim Mavuim, which comes out to be 32 different flows. Shel Shloshim V'Shnayim Nesivos, of the 32 Nesivos of Chochma. This is the Chef of Chochma. Asher Mehem Na'aseh V'Nimshachim Tilim Al Sa'aros. So from them comes out, or extended out, piles of hairs. B'chololatin Yana, not in the second one. Min ha'chalach ha'sheni shebegogolos Zair Anpin, shuhu chalu muach habina, which is the chalach habina. Nafke chamshi mavu, and now here we see 50 streams. Yotzei chamishi mavuim shel chamishis aribina sharibina. This are the 50 gates of bina haniftache b'chalu muach habina, which open up and they let out the stream that's coming out of bina. This mashkim sare meinin mavuin umin elu hamavuim nimshachim saras b'chutz legogolos b'shichusa. So he said v'saaros misarchim. So the saras, the hairs, these piles of hairs, he said, start to get long. V'nimshachim lamata, and they go downwards. Let me see what I'm doing here. Let me get this over a little bit. Lamata is avdin tilin. They make more piles. Once again, of many bundles, many hairs. What happens is they come out from these 50 gates, and they start developing downwards. From starting point being from the head, the top of the head. And they start mixing up with other hairs. Hayotzin min muach hachachma v'hadas, which come from the muach hachachma and das. Mechalolot to the saw. So that's it. So we have now the 32 paths that come out of chachma and 50 that come from gates that come from bina. And now we go b'chololot to the lisah. This is the third cholol, the third chamber that holds a moab. Men chalach hashlishi shebegogola Zair Anpin, that's inside of the head of Zair Anpin, shuhu chalo muach hadas, nafke elef alfim idrin v'achsadroim. So all different kinds of chambers come out. Yotze v'nimshach mebuim shel elef alafim oros. So now we have flows of streams of 1,000. What do you say? 1,000,000 actually lights. Hamispashnin the chadarim the prosdarim, that's spread into different walkways and chambers. Shebeshisha kitzvahs guf Zair Anpin, and where are they found? Where are all of those chambers? In the 6 kitzvahs Zair Anpin chagat 9. This mashkem sari, and then the min eloham avuyim. So now these are called streams. Nimshachim saras v'chutz legogolas. Then you see that there are hairs coming out from this skull. So the hairs that come out from the muach hadas, they're very long. That's interesting. They're much longer, he says. And once again, they pile up. Because there are so many hairs. And they get mixed up into other different sets of hairs. Let me see if we get this right. There we go. That come out of Chochmah Bina, they start mixing up. Everything gets mixed together. And again, and that's the reason why we use the word piles. Because of these, most muchadas, hey maruchim beyoser, they're much longer. Or it says they're extra long. Nimsa she'edo hakutzim, heim tilim al tilim. So it comes out that they're really piled one on top of the next. He heim tilim shal sa'aras anim shachim v'charuchim yoser amin tilim ayoser abin sharcha mochim, because these are longer, and as a result of that, they're piled up. Yotzim min sharcha moch. They come out to be longer than all the rest. So all of these hairs, hanim shachim al rosh Zair Anpin shamarnu, that are extended into the head of Zair Anpin, as we have said, is mashkan metlas cholol the bucha de gugolta. Hine shorish hamshachosim. So what is the root of their flow? Let me move this over a little bit. Hanimshacham al rosh Zair Anpin shamarno. So how they actually come out? This mashke miklas chalali de bocha de gugolta. So we just said that the hairs have a flow that is represent a flow that is coming out of the gugolta. Hine shorish hamshachosam. That the root of where they start to flow. So where do they start from? They start from the source of these mochin, which is Chabad. Shabatocha Golas Zair Anpin, which are actually have chambers and located inside of the skull of Zair Anpin. Ki hasaras ovrim derek hachalola, because the hairs pass. I don't know. He says al ki hasaras ovrim derek hachalola. He didn't say that. They go through the path of the chambers. So since the mochim actually get extended into these three different chambers, or they come from the three different chambers, so also we see that the hairs that are pulled down, so there are three different types of hairs that are represented by Zair Anpin. And as we see, is that they're all flowing downwards. So the same way that everything is going downwards, these also flow downwards. So all of these bundles of hairs and all of the hairs themselves. So we said the bundles, which are called nimin, and then the hairs themselves are called kutzim. Talian v'chapkin the sitra de udnin. So what happened? So they start going downwards. And they cover over from the side where the ears are, which is the right side, left side. Ki yosa sa'aras rosh Zair Anpin. Ki hius. They're what they are. Hey, but is dinim. They're all dinim. So they're a dinim. As Ozne Zair Anpin, and these dinim cover over the ears of Zair Anpin. And so therefore what happens is, as they're covering these dinim or covering over it up, the prayers from the coming down below are not heard by Zair Anpin. So when does that happen? At times when there's a time of accusation, in other words, there are sins that have taken place and have blocked the flow. You see these hairs. Matmas avodas are mispalalim because of the sins of the people who are praying. Again, kacha, for this reason, it's written like this. But the chich because of the Daniel. So Daniel writes like this: Hate Elokai azlecha u'shma. So he said, when you talk about Elokai, what does he mean? Incline, God, incline your ears and listen. Ki al yedech hatiyas ha'oizen l'tzad mata. So as the ear starts to what? He says that it inclines towards the bottom. Yistalku v'yisrachaku hasaras me'al ha'oizen. What happens is that it causes the hair that's over the ears to move, to be dislodged from covering over the ears. They hang loose. And that keeps the dinim from the hairs from damaging the ear or from covering the ears. Ella yitnohu makom the kenesis of tefillah. So therefore, what he said? He said when Zair Anpin bows his head, therefore just trying to think of myself. Therefore, the hairs flop over loose, and the ear is free. The kenesis of tefillah. So therefore, the tefillah can come in ba'oizin into the ear of Zair Anpin. Of a high tilin, and so when we're talking over here, we're talking about these piles. He said Baha'i, in this set of piles, the Eilach HaTilin, these piles, Shel Sa'aros, Hayotzi B'mochen Chochmeh B'bina and Daz Asher B'rosh Zair Anpin, Talia and Yabina the smaller. They hang down the right side and the left side, Nahora, light, V'chashocha, and darkness. Rachmei B'dina, also mercy and punishment. Tuluyin B'nim Soyin B'chinas Yamin is small, so we see that they're hanging down, and therefore we find here We find the bechinas yamin is small, that as they hang, they're really in the right and the left side. Bechinas or v'choshech or bechinas rachamim bedinim. So they come out, so we see all these different opposites. Ki bechinas yamin or v'rachamim v'rachamim. So let's look at it again. On the right side, we find yamin, we find light, and we find rachamim. They're the nimshachim esaras yotzim mebuach hachachma. So these come out of the hairs that are found in the Muach HaChochma, who have been Chasada, the Muach HaDas, and also the Chasada, they're in the Muach HaDas. It's Pashtin, the Tzad Yamin, or Gogolas, which spread into the right side of the Gogolas. V'chin is small, v'choshech, so then when you go to the left side, then you start finding blackness, darkness, bedinim, and punishments. Nimshachim misaras yotzim and Muach HaBina, which come out from the hairs that are coming out from Bina. Ugavuros the Muach HaDas, and also the left side of Das, which is the Gavuros of Das. And this Pashtin B'tzad small Gogolas, which extend into the left side of the skull. Because Yemina with a smaller Tali Bahai, and all of the whole concept of right and left really depends on this. The Chain called in Yana Yamid is small, so we have this concept from the Rav of right and left. Tuluyin b'zeh parts of Shel Zair Anpin, all of them are hanging down from the head of Zair Anpin. Yesh b'saras roshu b'chinas yamin usmol ka'amor, because we already said that there is a concept of the right and the left, which is where the hairs lie on the head of Zair Anpin. V'lechein nikra gam klalos parts of Zair Anpin b'chinas yamin is small. So since we have hairs on the right and the left, then we see what happened to that, how it comes down. I'm just thinking through it. So what happened to the front and the back? So he says that here's the concept of where the origin of right and left comes from, where from the skull of Zair Anpin, that's where the actual concept of opposite starts. That's what these are my words for it. A little bit of Atika, but it's not in Atika, which is Eric Anpin. Masha ain't came to parts of Eric Anpin, not Nikra Atika. Eric Anpin, because Eric Anpin, who parts of Shukula is Yamin, because it's a parts of where everything is the aspect of rightness, of the right side. Ki gam calls Aras Rosh Eric Anpin, Nim Shachim Rak Bebuach HaChochba Shuhu Bechinas Yamin. Only all of that comes from just one Muach. It's the Muach of the Chochma Stimah. Bepalgusa the Sa'aris. So in the split of the hairs, what does that mean? So he says in the middle. Now maybe he's going to talk about the middle now. Be'emsis aras rosh Zair Anpin. So in the middle of those hairs, the height of be'emsa rosh, in the middle of the head, is chazei chad urcha dakik. There is one path there which is very thin. Nira misgala orech shvil echad dak panui misaros. So this shvil would be empty of hairs. Let me move this around. The misachda mahaku orcha dakatika yamin. So what happens is misached. So I read that wrong. He says that misachda b'hachu orchodati kiyamim. So it joins together this middle spot in the skull of Zair Anpin, joins together with the flow that's coming from the path of Atik Yamin. Shemisached. It joins it. V'noitel shefa min haderek ha'elyon, and it takes the flow. About the bounty, the bracha, it's coming min derech ha'elyon, the shecha be'emtzis aras rosh Eric Anpin, which is coming from the middle of the head of Eric Anpin, hanikra atik yamin. Once again, we have this continuous use of the fact of atik yamin for Eric Anpin. I think that it means it's implied that there's an atik yamin there also. I think that's why he does it. That's my personal opinion so far. Because the upper path of Eric Anpin, Meir Bitzmidos, is constantly shining the derech hatachton down to the lower worlds, Shibarosh Zair Anpin, and ultimately winds up on the head of Zair Anpin. Who Iker ha-raso shel Eric Anpin b'Zair Anpin, and the main part of the light that's coming from Eric Anpin to Zair Anpin, that's really the Iker of the light. The Mahaku Archa is Parshan Shis Ma v'Sleiser Archa. So now we have 613 different paths that come out of this path. Which path is he talking about? Mina Aras Haderech Shibarosh Zair Anpin. So we're going to talk about the illumination that's coming through the path of Zair Anpin. Mispar shemischalek or l'sheish mei v'shlosh esrei drachim pratim. It all comes out into 613 different paths. So he said, is palgin ba'archin dibekudi dorais. So what happens is the mischalkim, and then they start getting divided up. This flow, we're just talking about a spiritual flow. It's coming from the top of the head of Zair Anpin. And mischalkim l'sheish mei v'shlosh esrei darchim mitzvahs and Torah. So they all develop into mitzvahs of the Torah. So here we're talking about Kedusha. Ki kol hatarga mitzvah shebetorah. So all of the 613 mitzvahs in the Torah, kolula be'elach hatarga drachim sheberosh Zair Anpin, they're all incorporated in the 13 different paths, 613 paths that we find in the head of Zair Anpin. Ba'al shem kach, and for this reason, nikroyim hatarga mitzvahs b'shem orchos. So this is why they're called paths. I never heard that before, but let's say that he's saying that that's why the mitzvahs, each mitzvah is a path. So al targum mitzvahs is a pasuk. He says in Tehillim, "Kol orchos Hashem chesed ve'emes." So here he's coming to say that the word orchos is really talking about these 613, which comes from the top of the head of Zair Anpin. The notes regarisa ve'adusa. Those have been created. Let's read the this is the Kesser Kavod. The mitzvahs they cry in Beloshan orchos, that the mitzvahs are called by the name paths. Behind the al shem sheklulim b'targov orchim sheberosh Zair Anpin, and the reason why is that the mitzvahs themselves are tied to the 613 paths that we're talking about in the head of Zair Anpin. Because on more of a pirush pasuk, because you want to know about the pasuk itself. He says, "Ki atargav mitzvahs adikroim orchos Hashem." So the 613 mitzvahs, which are called the mitzvahs of Hashem, heim atman mashpiim chesed ve'emes. They themselves pour out chesed ve'emes. They call echad ve'echad ve'yisrael al-shomer be'ozim mitzvah. So when you do a mitzvah, you're getting a pour from one of the 613 pathways that are coming off of the head of Zair Anpin. Ki al yedach b'mitzvahs yekabel tzadikim. Schar I'll call mitzvah ba'olam haba, because through these paths, he says actually the mitzvahs, the tzaddikim, the people who are righteous, they get a schar from that in the next one. This reward nimshach min taryag orchim. Where does it actually come from? It comes out from the 613 different paths sheberosh Zair Anpin, shorshim ba'orach sheberosh Erik Anpin. The root is on the path which is up at the top of the head of Zair Anpin. Excuse me, Sheberosh Erik Anpin. Their root is actually coming from Erik Anpin. The pasuk itself is talking about Zair Anpin. Ki Zair Anpin hu hanikra b'shem Avaya, because it is he who is called Yud Kei Vav Kei. Because of the orchos b'lashon rabim. So orchos is plural. So he says, what are we trying to say? Because on the head of Zair Anpin, the hairs fall down, or he doesn't say the word hairs. He said, but this is where he says mischalika, or the light that's coming from that head goes into many different paths. The hainu, which how many? 613 drachim. Erik Anpin, but if you wanted to know what's going on in Erik Anpin himself, Kasu, there it's written. Let me see. The Orach Tzadikim or Noga. There he says that the path of Tzadikim is like a shining light. Let me see. Or Noga. Orach Belashon Yachids. But here you see that the word Orach is in singular. Let me see. I'm trying to get my light right. Lefi she'ein nikar be'emsas aros rosh Erik Anpin. Rak Orach Echad, because in the head of Erik Anpin there's only one path. Here we go. So Af Alpi Shashorish Elach Taryag Drachim, but even though we understand that the root of the 613 paths are coming out of Zair Anpin, Nishrash Kavar Bederika Elliot is already rooted somewhere else. Where is that? In the upper path. Shebe'emsas Aros Rosh Erik Anpin, which is found in the center, the split, I guess, of hairs in Erik Anpin, because those ain't in the Nikarim Sham. So therefore, with all of this, you still can't recognize them. Kihem Nechlalim Sham Badakos Golo, because the thinness of their being combined is tremendously thin. Ve'enam niglan ela b'rosh Zair Anpin, and the only place, because in other words, it means it's very, very non-physical. And as a result of that, the only place you could see it is in a place which is a receptacle for more physicality, which is Zair Anpin. Tana lamadno. So we learn like this: V'kol kutza v'kutza, ki v'kol kutz v'kutz min sa'aros rosh Zair Anpin. Every single hair in the head of Zair Anpin. Misachtam elef alafim maradi yavova v'yololo. Now let's get into this. There's also dinim. That's what sound gets. These are whalers and what are the criers and whalers? V'yololo. Ne'achazim elef alafim. So they hold on. There's a million of them. Malachim b'alei dinim hanikrayim yavova v'yololo. So there's a different types of wailing and moaning. I think those might be the two words that come from these dinim. The dinim are all about what? They're all about punishment, and there's reasons for them. So he said, "Hey, dini olam yitzira. These are the dinim olam yitzira. Hanikrayim yavova, but dini olam hasiya hanikrayim yololo." Now I know that for sure that I've seen this not like that, but let's see. So that we'll go with that. So we'll say that the malachim, the dinim that are coming from yitzira are called yavova, and the ones that are coming from Asir are called Yololo. The Salian called Kutza Bakutza, and these things are hanging, these dinim, on every single hair, Me'inun Tekifi, from these tough ones. Now, what does he mean by tough ones? He said, dinim tuluyin called Kutz Bakutz. So we said that the Bali dinim, so the malachim that carry din, are hanging on the hairs too. Hine Aiden is Aksim Bakala Kutzim. They don't hold on to all of the hairs of the head of Zair Anpin. Only with the hard hairs. So here we hear that there's hard hairs and soft hairs. And then there's also ones that are very very soft. The miskala. So the soft hairs. Hamaskala. Now what is Bali Hamaskala? Maskala means the balance scale. Shehem Malachi Rachamim. So why is this? Because the balance is written for the middle line. So he said, Hamatim as a Mishkal Litzad Chesed. And what did they do? They cause everything to move towards the right. It's a very interesting idea here. He doesn't say that they are the right. He says it's the Rahmanas, but it's in the middle. But the middle, as Yaakov Cronenberg always saying, is that the middle wants to go to the right. Begin kach is yamina is smola, and that's the reason why you have a right and a left. So what is the reason? The fichach nimse shasaras rosh Zair Anpin klulu chen min sad yomim shuhu rachamim. They're all incorporated. Some on the side of rachamim, which is rachamim. Vehein min sad small, but then also others that come from the left side shuhu din. Nimshach bechinas yamin is small, and for these concepts that you have these different kinds of malachim, let's say one is on the Rahmana side and the other one which is on the din side, the small but called parts of Zair Anpin, they are found in every part of Zair Anpin. There is a little blurb here at the bottom that I want to look at, and it says Achar Shabir Inyan Hasa'aros Al Gabe Rosh Zair Anpin. Now we have come and we're explaining the hairs are on the head of Zair Anpin. Yivor Ata Inyan Hamatzach Shel Zair Anpin. So now we're going to be able to explain the concept of what's going on in the head of Zair Anpin. Ha'omed, which stands, Tachas Makom Has'aras, which is underneath the hairs. Yivor when there are people who are really doing bad things, now we see how the supervision of how everything is flowing is coming out of Zair Anpin. Where is this? Livdok. They livdok as I don't see the rest of this. It must be on another page. No, I don't see it. Okay, let's go on. I didn't really see where that went to. I don't see it. So now we're okay. What's happening with you now?